I spent $200,000. Kenny, who didn't even come to my mom's funeral, had suddenly flown overseas. $200,000. What did you do with all that money? Remember our nice piano at home? I sold the dude. Being from a rich family has its perks. It was a good piano. I never thought it would sell for $200,000. Kenny thought the piano at home was his, but he was wrong. My condolences. I get all the inheritance from the family estate. But that piano was actually bought by our grandpa for my brother, so it's still his. My brother loves that piano and teaches piano now. He left it at our house because it's too big for his place. If my brother finds out we sold it without asking him, he'll be really mad. Just giving him money won't fix it. When I told Kenny this, he hung up right away. Hi, I'm Rachel Schneider, a 45-year-old office worker. My family has a long history tracing back to colonial times and is quite prominent in our community. Thanks to my late father's successful business, we now possess assets worth $9 million. Originally, my older brother was set to inherit the family estate, but he chose love over inheritance, opting to forego his rights to marry his girlfriend, who needed an heir for her family's wealth. This decision left me with the task of finding a spouse to carry on our family name. Despite my desire for independence and reluctance to rely on family wealth, I focused solely on my career, and before I knew it, I was in my mid-40s and still single. Realizing the urgency of continuing our family line, I decided to take action and attended a singles mixer. It was there that I met Kenny, my current husband. Surprisingly, he's 10 years younger than me, but at the event, he showed no interest in the younger women and approached me directly. I'm not sure if you're okay with someone my age, I asked him multiple times. But Kenny gazed into my eyes and replied, I'm a bit shy and not very assertive. I've always been attracted to older, more grounded women. Kenny's demeanor matched his words, gentle and reserved. I sensed he could bring a sense of calm to my family, which tends to be assertive. As our relationship blossomed, there was something important I needed to share with him. My mother had been ill and bedridden for the past year, and my sister-in-law, Catherine, and I were taking turns caring for her. Considering our age and the prospect of marriage, I struggled with how to reveal this to Kenny. Eventually, on our third date, I mustered the courage to tell him. To my relief, he not only accepted but also proposed, expressing his willingness to assist with caregiving. His kindness deeply moved me. At least, that's how I initially felt. Kenny works as a daycare teacher, but just 4 months into our marriage, he expressed a sudden desire to quit his job. When I inquired about the reason, he wore a remorseful expression and said, "Sorry, Rachel. The parents at the daycare are too demanding and complain a lot. I can't handle it anymore." It was evident that Kenny was struggling, appearing so timid. Normally, I would have encouraged him to persevere, but with him assisting in my mother's care and my pregnancy progressing, I remained silent. However, I soon began to regret my leniency. One day, as I exited the shower and approached the bedroom, I overheard Kenny whispering on the phone. What I heard left me shocked and unsettled. I managed to tie the knot without her suspecting a thing. I'm jobless. She bought my story about quitting work hook, line, and sinker. Little does she know, I ditched that job 2 years back. His conversation seemed directed at a friend on the other end of the line. A faint male voice responded, "You're quite the operator. Rachel's family is loaded, so I thought I hit the jackpot when I met her at that singles event. But let's face it, given her age, I was probably her only option. I felt duped. Was the sweet Kenny I fell for all an act?" I wanted to confront him right then and there, but the thought of the baby stopped me cold. With Kenny's true colors revealed, I began to doubt our future. Today, Catherine will be looking after my mom until 5:00 p.m. Then it's my turn. I debated whether to confide in someone about Kenny. That's when my brother's wife, Catherine, approached me. "Rachel, you seem troubled. If there's anything on your mind, feel free to share," Catherine said, her kindness evident, having cared for her own mother for years and now mine. "She's really good with Mom too. So I confided in her about Kenny, and she listened attentively. It's good you opened up. Keeping it to yourself could harm your unborn child, she reassured me. Yeah, I'm sorry. Don't apologize. Talking won't solve everything, but it does lighten the load. Still, this situation is quite something. Catherine looked genuinely concerned, almost as if it were her own problem. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, and Kenny walked in without waiting for an answer. Both of us were surprised, but Kenny acted as if nothing was wrong and smiled. Rachel, I'll be helping with your mom's care from now on. You're not in the safe period yet, so I don't want you to strain yourself, Kenny said, playing the gentleman in front of me. Really? Okay, let me show you how to care for her. No, I'll learn from Catherine. You just rest at home. Well, my brother's coming home early today, so we won't need her help. Upon hearing that, Catherine looked at me, shaking her head, as if to say, it's okay. She might confront Kenny and get the full story once I'm gone. With that in mind, I decided to leave it to her and head home. But I couldn't shake my worry, so I pretended to leave but hid nearby. Catherine tried to start a conversation with Kenny, but he beat her to it. I've been meaning to ask, why are you taking care of your mother-in-law in this house? He asked, using the same tone as on the phone. Well, my husband's busy, and Rachel has her job. But more importantly, why you ask? Then Kenny erupted. What? And began hurling insults at Catherine. You live in such a wealthy home. You'd have enough money to put your mother-in-law in a care facility, wouldn't you? Or is it something else? Did your husband give up his claim to this family's wealth? So you're trying to curry favor by taking care of her? That must be it. You'd be pretty upset if you married into money and didn't get a piece of the inheritance, wouldn't you? It was cruel. I was furious too, ready to leave the room. But just as I was about to, Catherine, noticing me, signaled with her eyes to stay put. Reluctantly, I remained silent and watched the scene unfold. You've hit a nerve, haven't you? If that's the case, leave right now. This family's wealth belongs to my wife and me, so I'll handle my mother-in-law's care alone from now on. With Kenny's stern declaration, Catherine felt it was pointless to argue further and left the scene. Sensing the tension, I discreetly stepped outside, concerned about Catherine's feelings and wondering how to apologize to her. Kenny took over Mom's care entirely, refusing any assistance from me. He only provided basic instructions on caregiving. But his neglectful approach led to tragic consequences, and our mother passed away. The funeral took place at the church where generations of our family had been laid to rest. However, Kenny was nowhere to be found from the moment Mom passed away. Despite my attempts to locate him, I was too overwhelmed with funeral arrangements to pursue the matter. Relatives and neighbors were puzzled by his absence. Catherine, grief-stricken at the altar, apologized for trusting Kenny with Mom's care. Approaching her, I tried to offer some comfort. Catherine, please don't blame yourself. It's not your fault. Rachel, it's not your fault either. But where is that man? I wanted to confront him today, and he disappears just as Mom passes away. Exactly. And didn't Kenny often leave the house while he was supposed to be caring for Mom? Where was he going? Yes, neighbors mentioned he was frequently out, almost as if he wasn't caregiving at all, just loafing around. They also mentioned a big truck that came by once. What was that about? I wanted to ask, but with the funeral, I didn't bring it up. Days passed, and Kenny still hadn't returned. Then, I received a call from him. Hey Rachel, I'm in a fancy hotel in Europe, like the ones you see on TV travel shows, Kenny said nonchalantly. Kenny, you missed Mom's funeral, and now this. I spent $200,000. $200,000? Where did you get that kind of money? Remember the grand piano at our family home? I sold it. Who knew it was worth $200,000? Kenny confessed to selling the family's cherished grand piano and squandering the money on luxury travel in Europe. I never imagined Kenny would pull something like this while supposed to be caring for Mom. Our family home had tight security, but with family, it's different. That truck must have been there to move the piano. Why would you do something so selfish? The whole family was worried about you missing the funeral. Well, once you have a kid, you won't have much free time. Since you have a job, I guess I'll have to be the stay-at-home dad. Kenny's words left me stunned. Despite my anger, his willingness to take on childcare was a silver lining. But it seemed he was aiming to live off me. Additionally, Kenny seemed to think the piano belonged to me. Confronting Kenny, who had unknowingly sold a piano and spent the money, I started with, "My condolences." "Huh? What do you mean?" Kenny seemed bewildered, so I explained about the piano. "That piano belonged to my grandfather, bought for my brother. So it still belongs to him." "Oh, really? I'll just apologize to your brother then," Kenny replied, lacking any remorse for selling someone else's property. Kenny only met my brother at our wedding, so it's understandable he didn't know. My brother is a piano teacher and has loved the piano since childhood. He begged our grandfather for that specific piano. Although there's no room for it in his house now, it's still his. He even dreams of starting his own school with it. The piano means everything to him. I can only imagine what punishment he'll have for you when he hears it was sold without permission. By the way, my brother despises dishonesty. As I explained, Kenny remained silent. Understand? Mere compensation won't suffice when he finds out you sold his beloved piano. He's not one to compromise. I wonder what punishment awaits you. With that warning, the call abruptly ended. He's probably regretting it now. I called my brother and told him everything. Needless to say, he was furious. The next day, Kenny rushed home, finding everyone gathered in the living room. "What's going on? Why is everyone here?" Kenny asked nervously. "I heard everything from Rachel," my brother said sternly. "What possessed you to sell someone else's property, especially something so valuable, without consulting the family?" Kenny tried to justify himself, visibly shaken. I was just trying to pitch in with the household chores out of boredom. When I saw the old, large grand piano, I figured no one was using it anymore. So you decided to sell it. Yeah, it seemed like a waste to just leave it there. My brother, wearing a stern expression, pressed further. Really? That piano was special, imported by our grandfather from a top European manufacturer. Where's the money from the sale? As anticipated, my brother was playing his part well. Everyone probably knew Kenny had spent all the money on an overseas trip, but my brother was aiming for a confession in front of everyone. Kenny seemed lost in thought, struggling to come up with an excuse. The sales money. Yeah, it hasn't come in yet. Kenny stammered, clearly flustered, but my brother wasn't buying it. You're lying? How deceitful can you get? And what about those souvenirs from Europe in that huge suitcase? Kenny recoiled as if struck by lightning, closing his eyes in shame. I'm sorry, I spent all the money. Kenny's admission left the relatives murmuring in shock. Everyone knew the value of that grand piano. They couldn't fathom how Kenny could blow $200,000 on just one trip overseas. My brother, looking down at Kenny, lifted his chin with his hand, locking eyes with him as he said, "As Rachel probably told you, that piano was mine. Now that it's gone, you'll repay every penny. If you can't, I'll sue you for theft. Are we clear?" My brother's intensity was palpable, almost resembling a mob boss. While this would typically be a family matter, my brother was likely using intimidation tactics, knowing Kenny was clueless about the law. Predictably, Kenny lost his voice and began sweating profusely. Then, with a terrified glance at me, he pleaded, "Rachel, please help me." His voice was desperate, but I had no intention of intervening. This mess was entirely of his own making. When I rejected his plea, Kenny resorted to a ludicrous argument, saying, "Don't be so cold. I looked after your mom while you were pregnant. I saw the trip as a reward for myself after caregiving. Let's just say we both agreed to sell the piano this way. Since we're siblings, it can't be considered theft, right?" I was so dumbfounded that my mouth hung open, unable to form a response. It was Catherine who stepped in to defend me. "That's enough. Didn't you tell Rachel not to assist with caregiving? You even accused me of being after the inheritance and tried to push me away. Kenny, did you say such awful things to my wife too? Yes, I didn't want to worry you, so I kept quiet. But this man must have been scheming to sell the piano without letting Rachel and me near the family home. Catherine's words resonated with me, remembering how Kenny prevented me from getting close to the family home when he said he'd handle our parents alone. I reached the same conclusion. My brother's anger flared up once more. Listen closely. My wife cared for Mom because she wanted her to stay out of the facility. She agreed out of kindness, not for money. First, apologize to my wife right now. With my brother grabbing Kenny by the collar, tears welled up in Kenny's eyes as he knelt before Catherine. I'm so sorry, Catherine. Kenny's apology for his disrespectful behavior towards Catherine didn't soften the cold gazes of the relatives. Then, one of them shouted at Kenny. You need to repay the money from the piano sale promptly. We can't tolerate a criminal in the Schneider family. It'll stain our name. Misinterpreting the situation once more, Kenny made another peculiar remark. Exactly. We can't have a criminal in the family, right, bro? So let's keep calm. We'll work together as a couple to repay the debt gradually. Even my uncle was left speechless by Kenny's illogical response. Feeling that further discussion would be futile, I excused myself to retrieve something from my room. Ever since the phone incident, I had a divorce lawyer's business card ready. Kenny, call this number. I want our marriage to end. Let's handle things through legal channels. Kenny's face drained of color when he saw the business card I handed him. Why? We're expecting a baby. Why are you doing this? At that moment, I disclosed what Kenny had said to everyone on the phone. You heard that. It was just a joke. Do you think that's a valid excuse? I've known all along that you were after my inheritance. Everyone present glared at Kenny, realizing there was no way to justify his actions. Kenny responded with defiance, unwilling to admit his wrongdoing. Rachel, please, I need your help, Kenny pleaded in desperation. He explained that the buyer of the grand piano he sold wanted to return it and get a refund. When Kenny had sold the piano, he claimed it was in perfect condition. However, upon inspection, the buyer discovered a large engraving on the back indicating my brother's ownership. It seemed Kenny hadn't checked thoroughly. Instead of selling it through a reputable dealer, he likely chose a shady one enticed by offers like completely free, and now he faced the consequences. Kenny had to refund $200,000 to the buyer, a significant sum considering his debt to my brother. Despite Kenny's attempt to file for bankruptcy, my brother and I took legal action to prevent it. Now, burdened with more debt, Kenny worked tirelessly in manual labor. Eventually, the heirloom grand piano was safely returned. Relieved, my brother secured it with a strong lock and installed a security camera in the room, exercising caution. No one will touch that piano until I begin my piano lessons, my brother declared, unchanged from his childhood self, which brought a smile to my face. With his desire to start a piano school at our family home, I decided to discuss sharing our mother's inheritance. Feeling guilty for inheriting everything alone after Catherine's devoted care for our mother, I proposed the idea to my brother, who agreed. It ensured a positive relationship with his family in the future. And so, I welcomed a long-awaited baby girl. While some relatives hoped for an heir, I believe daughters tend to cherish their mothers longer in today's age. Besides, my mother, an only daughter herself, accepted a son-in-law, so if necessary, my daughter could do the same. Embracing single motherhood, I found unwavering support from Catherine, who had finished raising her own children. Grateful for her assistance during my mother's care, I felt deeply indebted to her. My brother eagerly volunteered to be a father figure for my daughter, his excitement palpable. Additionally, my brother and Catherine's 2 adult daughters, both kindergarten teachers, shared his passion for the piano, bonding with my daughter. Surrounded by such warmth and support, I felt immensely fortunate, and with gratitude, I resolved to face life's challenges head-on with my daughter by my side. I've been saving up a lot lately. My name's Cassie, and I can't help but smirk at my phone with a sneaky laugh. I'm 29 now, married for 2 years, and working hard as a housewife. Some of my coworkers think my smirk is weird, but I can't stop because I'm so close to saving enough money to build my dream home. The balance in my bank account is almost there. My husband Max and I don't have kids yet, but we've always planned to have some once we have our own home. I wanted to stay single a bit longer, but at 27, I fell in love with Max, who's a bit older than me. We work at the same company, but in different departments, which can be awkward, but I've stuck with it because finding a new job would mean less money. Now, after a lot of hard work, I'm almost ready to buy our dream home. It's been quite a journey. Life with my husband is smooth sailing, and our savings are growing steadily. We're content with our ordinary jobs and our plan to buy a simple home. Finding joy in this regular life is what makes me happiest. But there's one big hiccup: my relationship with my in-laws. It's the toughest part of being married. When I come home from work to our small rented apartment, seeing my in-laws' shoes at the door instantly drains me. They seem to be here again today. I let out a heavy sigh. I'm home. Oh, you're back. The one who responds isn't my husband Max, but my mother-in-law, comfortably seated on our cramped sofa. Good evening. Do you always come home this late? Our in-laws live just 3 train stops away, which is too close for comfort. That's why my mother-in-law often drops by without considering the inconvenience. You're home late again. What about Max's dinner? This happens too often. No sympathy for my long work hours, just complaints from my mother-in-law. I'm sorry, work was hectic. I'll cook something now. Max has been home for a while. Cassie, aren't you a bit inefficient? Even though Max and I work at the same company, our jobs are very different. Max rarely has overtime in his department, but he earns less. My department, however, is crucial to the company, often requiring me to work late. That's why I earn the highest salary in the company. I never bring this up myself, and I wish Max would, but maybe his pride gets in the way. He never speaks up. Right now, he's just quietly drinking his tea. Even though we both work, I feel like Max could pitch in a bit with the housework, but he steadfastly avoids it. Whether it's shopping, laundry, cleaning, preparing the bath, or cooking. When he gets home from work, he's either glued to the TV or absorbed in his phone. Oblivious to all this, my mother-in-law, as usual, came over to criticize me today. It's okay. I already had dinner with Max. Oh, you've eaten? We had some amazing sushi. I decided to treat Max to something nice for a change. I see. I was taken aback when I heard the name of the sushi restaurant. Isn't that an upscale place? Though surprised, since my mother-in-law footed the bill, I decided to let it slide and started heading to the kitchen to make my own dinner. But my mother-in-law stopped me. Cassie, I hate to ask, but could you do me a favor? I'm a bit short on cash this month. Could you lend me some? Just as I suspected, my mother-in-law often asks for money like this. I wanted to say, hold on a second. That doesn't seem right. You went to a fancy sushi restaurant, didn't you? And last month, you said you were struggling and begged for money. I reluctantly gave you $300, even though we're also tight on cash. And the month before that, and the one before that. Aren't you being a bit careless? But I held back and managed a strained smile. I'm sorry, we're all having a tough time this month. Can't you do anything for your struggling parents? You're the cold one, not me. Who's really cold here? Your son, who neglects his duties at home, leaves his wife alone, and goes out to eat sushi. Seems pretty cold to me. Finally, my husband Max chimed in. Cassie's mom is in a tough spot. Can't you lend her a hand? Oh, so we're really struggling this month, huh? Well, Mom, I'll help you out. Max sighed and pulled $500 from his wallet, handing it to his mother. Max is such a kind and wonderful son, unlike Cassie. I was stunned as my mother-in-law shot me a glare and headed for the door. I thought she was leaving, but then she turned back and glared at me again. Max, if you ever want to divorce your money-hungry wife, You're always welcome to come back home. I'll keep that in mind." With a slam, my mother-in-law left. What was that all about? I turned to Max, who was already lounging on the sofa with his phone. I confronted him. "Why did you give her $500? If we have that much extra cash, why not put it towards our household expenses?" I had my reasons for asking. While Max pays the rent for this apartment, that's the extent of his contributions. I cover all the bills like utilities, phone, groceries, and other expenses because Max refuses to chip in. "What do you mean? I pay the rent, don't I?" "You expect more than just that. You're so greedy." That's Max's usual way of avoiding financial responsibility. "I'm taking care of everything else, including the phone bill you're holding. It's understandable you earn more, but I only make a bit more than your salary. We're barely making ends meet with our expenses and savings." "Oh, you have enough to save? Then you should be fine." Suddenly, he reached out his hand when I mentioned savings. "What's this for?" "I gave my mom $500, and now I'm broke. Can you lend me some cash?" "What? Seriously? This is unbelievable." Despite keeping almost all of his salary except for rent, Max always claims he's short on money every month. He used to justify it by saying, "A man needs to socialize and entertain," and I reluctantly went along. But not today. Why should I foot the bill for you and your mom's sushi? Why am I responsible for that? It's a way to honor parents. What about me? Neither Max nor my mother-in-law ever show appreciation. It feels like I'm just a paycheck to them. And what was that about considering divorce? Exactly what it sounds like. If you keep being so tight-fisted, I might have to consider it. With that, Max locked himself in the bedroom. He even went as far as locking the bedroom door. In our tiny apartment, there aren't many places to go. With the bedroom inaccessible, my only option was to sleep on the sofa. These days, amid all the stress, the only solace I find is in checking my bank account balance. After enduring yet another round of sarcasm and financial demands from my mother-in-law, I'd opened my phone before starting my overtime shift at work. Logging into my savings account, which I've had since I was single, I thought everything was on track for our dream home. That is, until I saw something that made me freeze. "What's going on?" I exclaimed, abruptly apologizing to my boss before rushing home. "Max, are you here?" "Oh, what's going on? You're home early today." Max looked surprised. Before him lay an assortment of what looked like expensive sushi, and he wasn't alone. "Welcome home, Cassie. We're just visiting." Both in-laws were present, not just my mother-in-law, but my father-in-law too. I couldn't help but wonder why they were here. "What's happening?" "We're having sushi." "Want some, Cassie?" "Sushi? Where did this come from?" "Oh, we had some extra cash," they replied. Pressing for more details, both Max and my in-laws seemed taken aback. I grabbed Max's collar, as if to keep him from escaping, and he reluctantly handed me something. It was the bank book for the account I had just checked online. Flipping it open, I was left speechless when I saw the transaction history. "What's going on? How did you withdraw this?" I demanded, my anger rising. "Well, I just guessed the PIN, and it worked. Lucky me, right?" Max replied casually, showing no remorse for taking out a large sum of money without my consent. I was furious and on the verge of exploding at Max for his nonchalant attitude. How dare you take my money without asking? The funds I had diligently saved since my single days have been withdrawn without my knowledge. "Come on, we're married, aren't we? What's mine is yours. Don't be so uptight. This is the savings I've worked hard for since before we got married. Give it back. Relax, Cassie. What's yours is mine, naturally," Max said dismissively. Living off Max's support while secretly saving such a large amount of money. "You're so greedy," Max accused, his tone accusatory. "Yeah, exactly. You should appreciate me more. Who do you think you're depending on? It's unbelievable. I feel like I'm alone in this. Don't joke around. Taking my money like this is no different from theft. Give it back. Who's joking?" Max snapped, clearly startled by the accusation. Annoyed, he continued, Don't forget, I'm the one paying the rent here. And I have plenty of social obligations to fulfill. Plus, I help my parents. Right. Max is such a wonderful son. You leave the rent to me and secretly save all this money. It's easy for you. You only cover the rent. You hardly ever entertain, yet you ask me for money while supporting your parents. Stop it. You married into this. It's only right for you to respect me and my parents. What's more, be grateful I haven't divorced you for being so useless, Max yelled, grabbing my hand and pushing me out the door. Hey, no sushi for you. Go cool off outside. I never expected to be kicked out. After standing there in shock for a while, I ended up spending the night in a business hotel. The next day, when I returned home, only Max was there. I was relieved the in-laws were gone. But then Max handed me a piece of paper. It was a mutual agreement statement stating that if I didn't obey him, we would divorce. What's this? Listen, if you keep complaining, we're getting divorced. If you don't want that, just obey me silently. I'll take charge of the savings from now on, Max declared, flaunting the bank book. Then he got ready to leave. Where are you going? Out for a drink. What? Do you have a problem? Want a divorce? He taunted with a smirk and left. Such a foolish man. Did he really think threatening divorce would make me comply? My love for Max had completely vanished. Besides, did he seriously think there was still money left in the account he emptied? I had already withdrawn it all and moved it to another account. I felt uneasy keeping a large sum in one place, so I had multiple accounts. The bank book Max took was just one of them. I signed the paper without hesitation. Max's attempt at a threat didn't faze me. It was exactly what I desired. Quickly, I packed my belongings and left the house. I spent another night at a business hotel, and the following day, I took a day off work to file for divorce as soon as the city office opened. Then, I headed straight to a real estate agency. The previous night, while browsing on my phone at the hotel, I stumbled upon a property that caught my attention. A newly built detached family home near the station, perfect for commuting. It was almost love at first sight. The exterior and interior matched what I had envisioned. After viewing it, I made the decision to purchase the house on the spot. From then on, everything happened in a whirlwind. Staying in a business hotel until the move became too costly, so I explained my situation and stayed with a friend while getting ready for the new house. I had to start from scratch with furniture and other arrangements. Amid the whirlwind of activity, I completely forgot about my ex-husband and former in-laws. Hey, Cassie! Max's voice startled me one day when he showed up at my workplace. Oh, right, we work at the same company. As Max loudly called my name, drawing everyone's attention, he approached me without hesitation. Why haven't you been returning my calls? Oh, I didn't think they were important, I replied, remembering Max's persistent calls. I was preoccupied and didn't want the hassle, so I ignored them. You withdrew money from the account on your own, didn't you? Stop playing around. And why haven't you come back home? Do you really want to get divorced? It's fine, I replied nonchalantly. We're already divorced, and that money in the account is mine, so I can do as I please with it, I stated firmly. Max still seemed to view the word divorce as a threat. My casual response left him looking bewildered. What a silly expression. It's almost comical. What divorce? You mean you graciously offered it to me, and I graciously accepted, I remarked. What? I don't accept this, Max protested. Whether you accept it or not, the divorce is final. Oh, and I've already informed the company and completed all the necessary procedures. You might have some paperwork to handle, so make sure to report it to your boss, okay? With that, I redirected my attention to my computer. I'm busy. Where are you living now? You left your belongings at the house, Max inquired. I took what I needed. I'm comfortably settled in with new things I bought. Don't worry about me. And as for your whereabouts, that's none of your concern. This is a matter of privacy, so please refrain from prying any further, I replied firmly. With that, Max fell silent. Eventually, feeling the weight of the stares from my colleagues and boss, Max left the department without saying another word. Cassie's been through a lot. My colleague sympathized. The comfort of my new home was unparalleled. The scent of a freshly built house was unforgettable. It was spacious and cozy. However, having just moved in, there were still many things I needed. Today, I was anticipating the delivery of some appliances I had ordered online. Then the intercom rang. Ah, it must be here, I thought as I went to open the door. I immediately regretted it. I cursed myself for not checking the intercom. Standing before me was Mother. Technically, my former mother-in-law, but the words slipped out in my surprise. There she stood, accompanied by my former father-in-law. And further back, Max was lingering. "Long time no see, Cassie." "I'm coming in," Mother announced. "Wait, hold on," I protested, taken aback. My former mother-in-law barged into the house and began inspecting it as if assessing its value. "Oh, this property is quite nice. And this furniture is lovely. Move it to my room, will you? Oh, there's a basement too." "Excellent. Then this will be our room," she declared. Excuse me, but what's with these curtains? Dreadful taste. I'll choose new ones for you, so hand over the money," she continued. "The garden is quite spacious. Perhaps I'll start a vegetable garden." What were these people going on about? Confused, I turned to Max. "Max, what is?" "Be grateful, Cassie," Max interjected. I was about to confront them when my former mother-in-law cut in with irritation. I looked at her smug expression. "It's not much of a house, but as a gift for the parents, it's decent. If it's a two-family home, we'll move in. Of course, as the wife, you'll do the housework. We'll be generous and only ask for $1,000 a month for our allowance." What? What on earth is she saying? Are they from another planet? I couldn't comprehend and just tilted my head. "As the wife, I'm single now, you know," I added, surprising both my former mother-in-law and myself. "Max, you didn't tell them?" I questioned. "I don't accept it," Max shouted. But it didn't matter whether he accepted it or not. The divorce was final. We were complete strangers now. Upon hearing my declaration, my former mother-in-law's face paled. "What do you mean you're abandoning us?" "Your parents." "My parents live in the countryside. I was planning to invite them over soon," she protested. "Don't joke around. This house is ours," she insisted. "No, it's mine," I retorted. What was she thinking? This house was purchased with my savings in my name. "Then where are we supposed to live?" she demanded. "I don't know. That's not my problem," I replied, feeling the weight of their expectations. Apparently, they had already sold their house, and the contract was finalized. They planned to live a comfortable life in this house, with the money from the sale and whatever they could extort from me. It was a frightening plan. "I don't accept this," my former mother-in-law continued to protest. "But it doesn't matter. We're strangers now, and this house is mine. I won't accept it, absolutely not," I asserted firmly. In her anger, my former mother-in-law ripped the curtains. "Hey, what are you doing? These things I don't need, such bad taste. This is my house. I'll dim as I please," I snapped back. "That's right. What's yours is mine. Everything you own is mine," she insisted. "Listen, I don't accept this divorce, and both my parents and I are going to live here," Max shouted out. "Oh no, this is getting out of hand," I thought, just as I heard sirens. I had secretly called the police when Max and my former mother-in-law barged into the house. Finally, the police arrived. "What are you doing?" "We haven't done anything wrong," they protested. "That's right. If anyone should be taken, it's this woman," my former mother-in-law added. After a scene, they weren't arrested but were escorted away by the police. It had been a tumultuous day. After being released, Max continued to come by, insisting on reconciliation and getting picked up by the police each time. He even followed me to work. So after consulting with my boss, George, he received the stern warning. Misusing his wife's savings and assaulting her new home became the talk of the office, leading to an uncomfortable working environment for Max. His resignation seemed to affect him mentally, and he struggled to find new employment. My former in-laws, having sold their house, moved into the cheap apartment where Max and I had lived. It was an old, poorly maintained place, so it wouldn't have fetched much money. With the money from the sale, it seems like the three of them will be able to live modestly. Finally, free from all the drama, I'm relishing the comfort of my own home. Although I offered to have my parents from the countryside move in with me, they're not quite ready to make the move yet. So, for the time being, I'm enjoying the solitude of living alone. Perhaps I'll consider remarrying if the right person comes along, but for now, I'm content. One of the first things on my agenda is to get a dog, something I couldn't do while living in the apartment. I also have plans to try my hand at gardening and to host home parties with friends. As I gaze out the window at the blue sky, I think about all the things I couldn't do before and how I want to embrace and enjoy life from now on.
My name is Tammy, a 39-year-old professional employed in the sales department of a trading company. From my college days, I've been drawn to leadership roles, adept at rallying people together. Presently, I oversee a team of subordinates, rivaling the seasoned male counterparts in sales achievements. I take immense pride in the unwavering support I receive from my female colleagues, bolstering my role as a dependable manager. Yet, returning home to my apartment after a taxing day, I find no one awaiting my arrival. Having parted ways with my husband of 17 years and chosen to live separately from my 15-year-old daughter, I now dwell in a freshly rented apartment, surrounded by yet-to-be unpacked boxes. Despite the chaos, I harbor no regrets. This marks the commencement of a fresh chapter in my life. Let me delve into why I've embarked on this new journey. In the past, I resided in an apartment alongside my husband, Bob, and our daughter, Rebecca. Bob, a former college classmate turned spouse, and I tied the knot after reconnecting post-graduation and dating for 2 years. Initially employed in the sales department of a printing company, Bob transitioned into a self-employed web designer, operating from the comforts of our home. Our daughter, Rebecca, is currently navigating her way through 8th grade. The initial warning came in the form of a shift in Rebecca's demeanor. I asked for the moisturizing cream, Dad. Oh, my bad, sweetie. I completely forgot. I'll pick it up tomorrow after work, I promise. You're so useless. Can't you do anything right? Rebecca began casting colder glances my way, her words growing sharper with each passing day. Initially, I attributed it to her teenage years, dismissing it as a phase. Dad, want to catch a movie with me on your day off? Sure thing, kiddo. What's showing? Previously, Bob would always include me in such plans, but now, it seemed he had no reservations about excluding me. Hey, can I have some money? We're going to the movies this weekend, remember? $300 should cover it. $300. Seems a bit steep. Can't you just use your debit card? Just get it done. I'll need cash for shopping and dining out too. Gradually, even Bob's treatment of me soared. Our interactions dwindled, leaving me feeling increasingly isolated. Then came that Sunday, a day etched in memory, when both Bob and Rebecca voiced their dissatisfaction with the breakfast I prepared. What's this? I've told you I want my eggs over easy. Get it right. And this soup is terrible. I've mentioned my dislike for mushrooms countless times, but you still include them. Can't you say something to her, Bob? Why should I? You can't even follow simple instructions. You're the adult here. The chill in their words left me unsettled. Something wasn't right. I needed answers. But by the time I realized it, it was too late. One week, upon discovering Bob's intention to venture out, I resolved to discreetly trail him. Bob's typical routine revolved around his home-based work. There were no scheduled appointments at the barber or the doctor, so why this sudden outing? Suspicion gnawed at me. Regrettably, my suspicions were confirmed. In the cafe awaited a young woman, a woman in her 20s, possessing a striking physique. As they departed the establishment, arm in arm, my head spun, rendering me unable to pursue them. The dreaded day I had long feared had arrived. My apprehensions stemmed from a lack of confidence in my own appearance. I always harbored the fear that Bob might stray due to my perceived shortcomings in looks. While Bob exuded undeniable handsomeness, I often questioned why he had chosen me. Subsequently, I enlisted the services of a private investigator to delve into Bob's relationship with the woman. Your husband's paramour is a 26-year-old named Sofia Garcia, employed at a cosmetic surgery clinic. Among the photographic evidence presented by the detective, some were too explicit for me to bear directly. They depicted open displays of affection, hotel entrances, and disturbingly, there were images featuring a certain third party. And here's another. This one shows the three of them, including Rebecca. What could this possibly mean? So, it seems your daughter is involved as well. It appears that your husband's relationship with Sofia has the approval of Rebecca. I was speechless. A profound sense of isolation and abandonment washed over me. What had I done to deserve this? Suppressing the urge to cry, I mustered the strength to request the detective to also record conversations between Bob and Rebecca. Several times each month, they would coax money from me for their movie outings and shopping sprees. I was convinced that amidst their casual conversations, there must be indisputable evidence. Days later, as I listened to the audio recording provided by the detective, I was rendered speechless. She's so annoying. Can't even do the simplest things right, then tries to act like she's your mom. Why don't you just leave her? Sophia's been waiting patiently, hasn't she? Speaking of which, Rebecca, I think it's too early to talk about divorce. That's ridiculous. Sophia's been waiting, hasn't she? I've discussed it with Sofia. I can't stand being around that ugly woman. Same here, but she's the one bringing in more money. So, you understand, right? Is that a yes? I wasn't sure. Yeah, that's the plan. If I rush into a divorce, I'll lose access to that money. We need to proceed cautiously, withdraw as much as we can, then let Sofia move in. Exactly. I'll need to gauge if Sofia can handle that lifestyle, and if not, I'll have to persuade her. But I think she'll be fine. She's so accommodating. Beautiful women just have a different way about them, you know? Yeah, I get it. I regret it deeply. Marrying that unattractive woman was the biggest mistake of my life. That evening, beneath the scalding spray of the shower, tears streamed down my face. I wept until there were no more tears left to shed, and in that moment, I resolved to take action. Enough was enough. If that was their scheme, then so be it. I refused to be taken advantage of any longer. I vividly recall the arduous weeks that followed. Each day, I buried my emotions and forged ahead with the preparations for my liberation. Even on the day of Rebecca's middle school graduation, my heart remained numb to any profound sentiment. Oh dear, I can't seem to settle on a hairstyle. It's quite vexing. Whose genes sculpted this face? Truly, Rebecca bore an uncanny resemblance to me. Gazing into the mirror, I brushed off her usual snide remarks. Hey, I need some cash. Around $400 should cover it. What else would a kid need $400 for? Besides, it's your graduation today, right? Obviously, I'll be hanging out with friends afterwards and grabbing dinner with Dad. Reluctantly, I handed over the $400, silently declaring it the final time. Rebecca accepted the money without a hint of gratitude. Hey, I'm planning to get plastic surgery soon. Plastic surgery? So you're bidding farewell to this face that supposedly resembles mine. I can hardly wait. A complete makeover before high school kicks off. Okay. Ha, I'm surprised. I expected you to be more opposed to it. What a disappointment. Well, I won't interfere. It's your body, Rebecca. You get what I mean, right? It's only natural to consider plastic surgery with a face like this. It's your fault, she asserted. Later, I drove Bob and Rebecca to middle school. Just before reaching the school, Rebecca requested I stop the car. Dad and I will get off here. You can head home, you know. I don't want my friends to see you, right? Of course, I replied, heading back home. I had no inclination to attend the ceremony. Everything proceeded according to plan, a welcome relief. Upon returning to the apartment, I awaited the arrival of a truck and 3 men. We'll pack and move everything out. With the amount of stuff, it should take about 2 hours. Thank you. I appreciate your assistance. That day marked my relocation to a new apartment, leaving the divorce papers on the table of the old one. I had requested time off from work and spent it touring various domestic destinations, relishing the rare freedom. Though perhaps I could have savored it more without the persistent calls from Bob and Rebecca. A few days later, I returned to the new apartment, refreshed from my journey. After finally picking up one of Bob's incessant calls, he exclaimed, "You finally answered. Where are you? What are you up to?" "Just relaxing in my room, watching TV." "Why the urgency? You sound flustered. Is everything all right?" "What do you mean? Is something wrong?" What do you mean by your room? Explain yourself properly. There's nothing. What do you mean? You saw it, right? The divorce papers. That's it. No further explanation needed, right? So you knew about About what? If you mean your affair, I knew. I have no intentions of backing down. I figured, with your income, you can't support Rebecca. Tough luck, I'm filing for divorce and seeking alimony too. Who says I'm going to pay alimony? We should discuss this matter calmly. Sure, you can bring Rebecca along or not. It doesn't matter to me. With no desire to continue the conversation, I abruptly ended the call, powered off my phone, and severed all contact. I chose the cafe for our discussion, the very same one where I had first seen Bob meeting with Sophia. But this time, only Bob showed up. There was no sign of Rebecca. She must be recovering from her plastic surgery. Poor girl. Who's that with you? I inquired. This is my attorney, Mr. Johnson. Bob replied. You brought a lawyer? Well, did you bring the filled out divorce papers as I asked? As I've said, I won't fill out such a thing. I'll tell you as many times as it takes. I have no intention of breaking up. Do you just want the money? I do. Do you think we can continue our marriage for that reason? What? Who said I'm after your money? Who said it? You're making assumptions about people's feelings. I nodded at Mr. Johnson, who then took out his smartphone and calmly pressed play. What ensued was a conversation between Bob and Rebecca from that day. Bob's complexion turned ashen instantly. It's quite an experience to hear your own derogatory remarks played back to you. I don't want to breathe the same air as that ugly woman. If I carelessly break up with her, I won't be able to use the money. Bob's voice echoed through the cafe. No matter how many times I hear those words, they pierce straight through my heart. Knowing that this is his true sentiment sends shivers down my spine. A recording? What the hell do you think you're doing? Bob exclaimed. What am I doing? I think I should be the one asking that. Did you use the money? I want to clarify something before we proceed. You have been seeing Sophia, correct? I asked, studying Bob's expression. Yes, that's correct, Bob affirmed, nodding. In that case, Mr. Johnson interjected, if you have no intentions of divorcing, we will proceed with filing for divorce in family court. We will also discuss the division of assets. The court will examine the circumstances and ascertain the facts to determine whether the divorce is warranted. Mr. Johnson held up a smartphone. The conversation you had with your daughter earlier is quite significant in this case. In my professional opinion, divorce seems highly likely. Oh, I see. I came here today to discuss what happens next, I explained, pulling out various documents meticulously prepared for this occasion. This chart outlines the money I've given you and when, and this document details the utility bill payments. What? What's all this for? Bob demanded, clearly taken aback. And here's a record of withdrawals from our joint account, I continued, presenting another document. Rebecca's surgery incurred significant expenses, didn't it? Eyelid surgery, eye shape correction, double eyelid surgery, nostril reduction, filtrum reduction, creating tear bags, cheek and nasal bone shaving. The total costs amounted to $40,000. There's only about $20,000 left in savings. We used to have $70,000. You've spent quite a sum, haven't you? That was for Rebecca. I could replenish the savings. Do you realize I was the one who primarily contributed to that money? I could feel my anger rising. I'm willing to divide what remains in the account for asset distribution. I won't make any claims about the cost of Rebecca's surgery. However, what I do expect you to compensate for is the emotional turmoil I've endured. Keep that in mind. And by the way, have you been in contact with that woman, Sophia? No, not really, Bob replied. That's concerning. I had a private investigator look into her background. Turns out she has a criminal record. You need to watch your back. A criminal record? What for? Bob's alarm was palpable. She was charged with fraud and arrested. It seems she was colluding with the director of another cosmetic surgery clinic. What in the? She must have seen you and Rebecca as easy targets. My sympathies, and Rebecca's surgery. I hope it went smoothly. If not, we might have to negotiate with the hospital or even consider legal action. We'll need to assess whether the clinic is willing to settle. In cases like this, many clinics refuse to admit fault and become obstinate, Mr. Johnson added, causing Bob's complexion to noticeably pale. That's all for today. Send the divorce papers to Mr. Johnson. I will be providing my address. Wait, please, just one more thing. Can you lend me some money? Bob's plea was pitiful. I can't believe I ever fell for a man like him. Absolutely not, I stated firmly, leaving the cafe with Mr. Johnson, leaving Bob behind, visibly devastated. Rumors later circulated about Bob and Rebecca's downward spiral. Bob struggled to afford even a modest apartment on his salary alone. To support Rebecca, she had to take up odd jobs like newspaper delivery, and they downsized to a cheaper apartment, compromising their standard of living. Bob's web design projects weren't sufficient, and he resorted to day labor to make ends meet. It was truly pitiful, but Bob had to persevere. After all, he still owed me alimony. I decided to allow him to pay in installments. Paying the full $30,000 upfront would have been impossible for Bob, even his struggling business that barely covered his supplementary income. Taking out a loan was out of the question. I could have suggested borrowing from a loan shark, but I didn't want to subject him to that kind of pressure. A few days later, Rebecca called me. As expected, the surgery was a failure. It was far from what she had hoped for. Rebecca and I met at the cafe, having not seen each other in a long time. She still had bandages on part of her face. The surgery had left noticeable marks, and she would require further procedures to correct them. It was a dire situation. So still no luck reaching that Sophia girl, huh? Yeah, you were spot on, Mom. She saw us as easy targets, Rebecca remarked, gazing out the window with a thoughtful expression. She appeared more mature to me than ever before. Well, I should get going now. Part-time job first and high school homework. My schedule's pretty packed, she explained. Good luck, I wished her. Thanks, Mom, and I'm really sorry for all the trouble I've caused, Rebecca apologized sincerely. No need to suddenly be so polite. I won't be giving you any more money, okay? I won't bring it up again. With a nod, Rebecca left the cafe, marking the beginning of where I am today. I have few regrets. I'm content with my current life. Rebecca is practically independent now, and I hold no lingering feelings for my ex-husband, who had little to offer besides his appearance. I saw him recently in town, covered in dirt, working in construction gear and a helmet. Did he always have such sorrowful eyes? He looked entirely different. I hardly recognized him. Making a living is challenging, and he deserved to face difficulties after squandering so much money. It's not all about looks. I truly believe that now. I'll continue to do my best just as I am. With the reset button pressed on my life, the future appears brighter than ever before. My name is Emily, and at 43 years old, I find myself navigating life's twists and turns alone. 2 years ago, my husband John, who was my age, was taken by a sudden heart attack. His absence left a void that seemed insurmountable. We had hoped for children, but fate had different plans, leaving us in a silent ache of unfulfilled dreams. Guilt often washed over me, knowing John's deep longing for fatherhood. Yet in his wisdom, he reassured me, our happiness doesn't depend on children. It's in cherishing each other, just the two of us. We held on to those words tightly, crafting moments of joy amidst our shared sorrow. But life's capriciousness had another chapter in store for me. In a cruel twist, just as we found solace in each other's company, I found myself grappling with the stark loneliness of his absence. In this unforgiving reality, circumstances led me to reside alone under the same roof as my late husband's mother, a woman with whom I frequently found myself at odds. Our living arrangement became the result of John's parents' divorce, with his father now a presence in our shared dwelling, a two-family abode offering the only solace in an otherwise strained situation. Yet, as time passed, my mother-in-law's visits grew more frequent, perhaps driven by a longing for her departed son. I couldn't help but feel apprehensive. Demeanor was often overbearing, punctuated by subtle jabs. What exactly do you mean by that? I would inquire, bracing for the inevitable sting of her words. It's because he ended up with someone like you that John's no longer with us. You bear some responsibility, she would assert, her accusations as sharp as ever. Her reproaches were nothing new, but each time they cut deeper. Are you seriously suggesting that I'm to blame? I challenged, grappling with the weight of her accusations. Perhaps he fell ill because you couldn't manage his diet properly. I suspect your cooking was too rich. His weight gain after marriage speaks volumes, my mother-in-law asserted, her words like barbs aimed directly at my heart. While it was true that John had put on weight since our wedding day, he always praised my cooking and savored each meal with genuine delight. His kindness knew no bounds. Even if the food had been supper, he'd have eaten it without complaint. If only you had been more vigilant about his health, this tragedy could have been avoided, she continued, her tone heavy with accusation. These words, delivered by my mother-in-law in the somber days before John's funeral 2 years ago, struck me like a thunderbolt. Blaming me for John's illness and passing was a cruel twist of fate, one that left me reeling with pain. Though I knew the accusations were unfounded, the constant repetition took a toll on my psyche, making an already difficult time nearly unbearable. For my mother-in-law, Joe must have been the center of her universe. The abrupt and untimely loss of her beloved son must have been excruciating. I could empathize with her struggle to contain her emotions. However, her attacks on me intensified with each passing day, a development I had sadly anticipated. Because of you, my precious son is gone. Were you plotting to inherit his insurance money all along? She accused, her words cutting like daggers. How many times must I deny such baseless accusations? It's simply not true, I retorted, trying to maintain my composure. You deliberately avoided having children just to claim his insurance money, didn't you? You're a devious woman, she spat venomously. As a couple, we longed for children and pursued every avenue, including medical assistance. But despite our efforts, we were unable to conceive. The notion of profiting from insurance is ludicrous, I explained, my patience wearing thin. Do you honestly believe I would fall for such a charade? She scoffed, her disbelief palpable. Each day without John is a torment for me. I can't pretend to be anything other than what I am, I replied, my voice tinged with sorrow. Why do you utter such cruelty? It would have been better if you had never been part of our lives. Why did Joe have to endure this? Your words are unbearable. I can't bear the thought of never seeing my son again, she lamented, her anguish pouring out in waves. What would John think if he heard you now? Pointing fingers won't bring him back. Joe was a remarkable and hardworking son. His loss is incomprehensible. It would have been easier if you were here. There's a line you don't cross. Some things are better left unsaid. Oh, I'm just talking to myself. Voicing thoughts that have been haunting me. It's nothing you need to concern yourself with. What's your ultimate point? Leave? And why should I leave? Your presence is suffocating. I won't demand it today, but please vacate this house at the earliest. Since John's passing, ownership rightfully belongs to me. After John's passing, you've probably got your eye on the insurance money and the house, haven't you? She accused, her tone heavy with suspicion. You're making wild assumptions. I wasn't even aware of any insurance payout until after he passed. I defended myself, feeling the weight of her distrust bearing down on me. Her discovery of the insurance payout seemed to fuel her suspicions, as if she believed I had orchestrated John's death to secure the house and money. No matter how hard I tried to reason with her, she remained steadfast in her mistrust. I felt like I was reaching my breaking point. Living under the same roof was becoming unbearable, each day more mentally draining than the last. The next day, the tension boiled over. You must be living the high life now. No need to worry about work with all that insurance money rolling in. Is that why you're here, to rub it in? She sneered, her words laced with bitterness. It's not fair to twist my words like that. I can't take these constant jabs. I understand you're grieving for John, but it's not right to lash out at me. I miss him just as much and feel the ache of his absence every day, I replied, trying to maintain my composure amidst the storm of accusations. Seriously, spare me the act. You've got it made with the house and money, don't you? Playing the devoted wife role, I see, she sneered, her tone dripping with sarcasm. I won't entertain such accusations. We face our own struggles, particularly with not having children, but I loved John deeply and envisioned a future filled with cherished moments together, I countered, trying to hold onto my dignity amidst her onslaught. It's astounding how you can speak so freely with everything falling into place for you. Must be nice having life handed to you on a silver platter, she retorted, her words cutting deep. That's a heartless thing to say. If I could trade the money and the house just to have John back, I'd do it without a second thought, I confessed, my voice tinged with sorrow. Ah, so you're implying you don't need the insurance money then? She pressed, a hint of skepticism in her tone. Why would you even suggest such a thing? Just because I don't need it doesn't mean I'll refuse it. This money represents John's last gesture of love and concern for my future without him. I intend to honor that sentiment, I replied firmly, determined not to let her diminish the significance of John's final gift to me. You have no shame, she spat, her disdain evident in her tone. Feeling the strain of our cohabitation weighing heavily upon us both, I summoned the courage to broach a topic that had been weighing on my mind. Can we put an end to this arrangement? I proposed, hoping for a resolution to our ongoing conflict. What do you mean? She inquired, her tone wary. We argue every day, and it's taking a toll on both of us. I believe it's in our best interest to part ways, I explained, bracing myself for her response. That sounds like the most sensible option. Please make arrangements to vacate the premises soon, she replied, her words tinged with finality. It's you who should be leaving. This house belongs to me, I countered, feeling a surge of indignation. I can't believe you're trying to evict me. You're even more heartless than I thought. The house is too large for me alone. I'm contemplating selling it and settling elsewhere. Besides, properties in this area fetch a good price, I declared, determined to assert my own interests in the face of her hostility. Seems like every conversation with you circles back to money. How much is enough for you? If you're considering selling, why not just hand the house over to me? It'll be too much for you to manage alone, and the expenses, like property taxes, could become overwhelming. I could help you find a more suitable living situation, like an apartment. Are you suggesting I pay rent to stay in my own home? If selling is your plan, then consider handing it over to me. Renting an apartment would likely be more economical than maintaining this entire house. I can't commit to monthly rent payments, but I'm willing to contribute towards it. If that's the arrangement, so be it. I'm relieved to finally break free from living under the same roof with you. I always feared it would come to this. Just promise me you'll provide financial support. Agreed. Let's start the search for an apartment soon. So, we made the decision to go our separate ways. Despite our complicated relationship, my mother-in-law is the mother of my late husband John. I feel a duty to support her, especially considering her financial struggles. With this in mind, I began the search for a suitable apartment for her. I feel like I've let you down. The diagnosis was a cerebral hemorrhage, but thankfully, it wasn't life-threatening. I spent 2 months in the hospital, including my recovery time. Throughout my stay, my mother-in-law never once came to visit. It was my parents and sister who took turns caring for me. Their unwavering support allowed me to regain almost normalcy in my daily life, with only minor lingering symptoms. And before I knew it, my 2-month hospital stay had passed, and the day of my discharge had arrived. I had initially planned to temporarily stay at my parents' place, but upon returning home to gather my belongings, I was greeted by a startling sight. What? Where's the house? What happened? I exclaimed, unable to comprehend what I was seeing. My mother-in-law appeared as though she had been expecting me. Congratulations on being discharged. I didn't expect you to look so well. It seems there are minimal lingering effects, and I can resume my usual routine. I'm relieved to hear that you're doing better. But what happened to the house while I was in the hospital? I inquired, my mind reeling with questions. Well, you see, I sold it for around $150,000, she replied matter-of-factly. What do you mean you sold it without consulting me? I demanded, incredulous. I had a friend who was eager to live in this area. Her husband works nearby, and they needed a place urgently, so I went ahead and sold it, she explained casually. Selling it without even informing me is completely unacceptable, I protested, feeling a surge of anger. It's not that big of a deal. I received an offer right after you were hospitalized. I figured even if you recovered, you might struggle to live independently and could end up in a care facility, so I made the decision on my own. Don't be upset, she said, trying to justify her actions. I can't believe this. Thanks to me finding a buyer, we got $150,000 from selling the house, she added, as though it were a positive outcome. I can't believe it. While I was in the hospital, my mother-in-law sold the house without consulting me. Apparently, their acquaintance had always coveted the land surrounding my house, and my mother-in-law took it upon herself to arrange a private sale, I recounted, feeling a mix of shock and betrayal. Are you seriously considering selling someone's house without their consent and pocketing the proceeds? I questioned, appalled by her audacity. But the house was originally in John's name, wasn't it? She countered, attempting to justify her actions. While that may be true, I fail to see how that concerns you, I replied, growing increasingly frustrated. Anything that belonged to my son John is rightfully mine, she asserted, her tone unyielding. You seem to conveniently interpret things in your favor, but that's not how ownership works, I retorted, feeling exasperated. What exactly are you implying? She challenged. When John passed away, the title of the house transferred to my name, I explained, hoping to clarify the situation. And what's your point? She asked, seemingly unfazed. Selling a house without the owner's consent is bordering on criminal behavior, I stated firmly, unable to hide my disbelief. Please refrain from calling me a criminal, she snapped defensively. Who would have thought you'd consider life as usual after hearing about the cerebral hemorrhage? That doesn't give you the right to sell it, I argued, struggling to contain my frustration. Why the hostile expression? Do you honestly believe you'd win in court? How about we split it 50-50? That way, we each get $75,000, she suggested nonchalantly. It's not about the money, I snapped, feeling my anger rising. Then why are you so upset? While I was hospitalized, she single-handedly sold her house and used the proceeds to purchase a condo for herself. Strangely enough, there was a condo neighboring our old house for sale at around $75,000, and she's currently residing there. To top it off, she relocated my belongings to her new place. It seems that during those 2 months of my hospitalization, she doubted the severity of my condition and took it upon herself to make significant decisions. It was time to confront the self-centered woman with the truth. The house is no longer in my name, I revealed, my voice tinged with resignation. What do you mean? I demanded, struggling to comprehend her actions. I started the process of selling the house while I was in the hospital, she confessed. And what of it? I pressed, my frustration mounting. Due to its prime location, the sale was swiftly arranged. I was meant to handle the paperwork post-discharge, but it's already been finalized, so there's no turning back, she explained matter-of-factly. You must cancel it immediately, I insisted, feeling the surge of urgency. It's my property, so I see no reason to cancel, she countered, her tone firm. You need to explain the situation to your acquaintance and return the $150,000. I urged, hoping she would see reason. What are you suggesting? I've already purchased a condo, she revealed, her response leaving me speechless. So you're only willing to return half of it? I asked, feeling a mix of frustration and disbelief. Then you'll need to sell the apartment you're currently residing in to repay the remaining sum, won't you? I pressed, determined to find a solution. My clients are also considering demolishing the house, so it's convenient for them. I need to proceed with the necessary procedures, so please arrange for the refund promptly, she insisted, her tone resolute. Wait a minute. We're not finished discussing this, I interjected, feeling a sense of urgency. I'm considering returning to my parents' home, so I'd appreciate it if you could arrange to have my belongings sent there, I requested, hoping for some semblance of cooperation. Wait, I have a feeling today will be the last time we see each other. Please take care, she said, her words tinged with finality, leaving me with a sense of resignation. After that incident, I severed all ties with her. Later, I heard she apologized to the acquaintance she had sold the house to without my consent and reimbursed them. The total expenses, including demolition and inconvenience fees, amounted to roughly $170,000. Additionally, despite selling her apartment, its value had decreased since her purchase, leaving her with substantial debt. On the other hand, thanks to her actions, I saved on demolition costs and made a significant profit from selling my house. A new home was constructed on the land where John and I had once lived. Seeing the new house brought back memories of the happy times we shared, evoking both nostalgia and sadness. Despite my reservations, I decided to visit the site. To my surprise, someone I never wished to see again appeared. Well, it's been some time, hasn't it? She greeted me. Why are you here, mother-in-law? I asked, taken aback by her unexpected presence. I'm heading to work, she replied casually. You're going to work now? I questioned, surprised by her response. Yes, she affirmed. So you've started working? I inquired, puzzled by this newfound revelation. I'm drowning in debt because of you, I accused. How can you say that? I'm not responsible for your financial troubles, she retorted defensively. What happened to the assistance you promised with my apartment? I pressed. Our relationship has ended, so any previous agreements are null and void, she replied coldly. John would be devastated by all of this. I would tell him the same, I stated, my voice tinged with sadness. What do you mean? She inquired, her tone softening slightly. John always prioritized me and treated me with kindness. He was considerate, wasn't he? I reminisced. What's your point? She asked, sensing where the conversation was heading. You used to blame me every day, saying that John's death was my fault. I reminded her. And it's the truth. How do you think John would feel if he knew? She fired back. Mother-in-law, if it weren't for John, you would be in a much worse situation. I pointed out. Are you still going to insist on that? Will it change anything? She challenged, her tone bitter with resentment. I have no interest in being lectured by you. With all the money you now have, you should take on some of the debt burden. After all, we're still family, aren't we? She retorted, her tone tinged with bitterness. I never truly cared for you, but I intended to support you because you're John's beloved mother, I confessed. Well, that's the least you can do, she replied, her voice laced with expectation. However, I can't overlook some of the hurtful things you've said and done since my stroke. I can't simply forget the pain caused by your words, I admitted, feeling the weight of unresolved grievances. That was months ago. It's time to let go of grudges, she insisted, brushing off my concerns. It's not easy for the person who was wounded by those words to simply move on, I countered, my frustration mounting. You're quite stubborn, aren't you? Call it what you want, she dismissed, showing no remorse. I'm no longer involved. By the way, shouldn't you be at work by now? I redirected the conversation, eager to end the confrontation. Ah, look at the time. Take care on your way, she responded, avoiding the topic. If it weren't for you, I'd be enjoying a peaceful retirement, I remarked bitterly. It sounds like you regret your decisions. Instead of blaming others, perhaps it's time to reflect on your own actions, she suggested, deflecting any responsibility. After expressing my thoughts to her, I walked away from the confrontation. I recounted. It's only been 2 years since John passed away. Thanks to the financial security he left behind, I've been able to build a stable life. His legacy means everything to me, and I'm determined to honor it wisely. I've invested in an apartment close to my parents' home where I now reside alone. Though I long for John's presence, I take solace in the belief that he watches over me from above. My aim is to lead a long, fulfilling life, cherishing the memories we shared and living for both of us. My ultimate dream is to one day reunite with him in heaven, where we can relive our cherished moments together. Leave, you useless old ladies who can't even clean properly. My husband and I, who were living with our eldest son and his wife, were giving $3,000 to help with expenses every month. But his wife would often insult us with hurtful words and make life difficult for us. We were fed up and angry. We didn't want anything to do with her anymore and decided to get back at her someday. My name is Susie. I'm 62 years old and work part-time while also taking care of our home. I live with my husband David, who is the same age as me. David works in an office and is a kind and serious man, so we have a stable income and rarely argue. Our son, Lawrence, is 32 years old. He's just like his dad, kind-hearted and responsible. After finishing university, he got a job at a private company and is working hard. 2 years ago, he married a woman named Emily, whom he met at work. However, it turned out that Emily was actually a very mean person. When we first met her, she appeared to be serious and nice. Lawrence assured us that she was hardworking at her job and had a good relationship with her bosses. Emily is 6 years younger than Lawrence, and although we weren't sure if they would get along, we trusted Lawrence's judgment. After they got married, Lawrence and Emily moved into their own apartment. Emily promised to take care of all the household chores so Lawrence could focus on his work. Lawrence seemed appreciative of her help. He often said, "Thanks to Emily taking care of everything at home, I can concentrate on my job." I'm grateful. My husband and I believed that our son had chosen a good wife. But Emily's true nature began to emerge gradually. We had a family gathering for New Year's, and when I saw Emily, I didn't even recognize her at first. She looked completely different. The last time I saw her, she had black hair and wore minimal makeup, appearing reserved. But now, she had transformed into a bold woman with pink hair, wearing loud bracelets on her wrists. She seemed like a whole different person. My husband, David, and the rest of our family were surprised by Emily's drastic change. Lawrence tried to smooth things over. I'm sorry if this caught you off guard. I was also surprised when I came home from work one day to find Emily like this. But she manages the household well, and we don't have any problems. Plus, Emily is a full-time homemaker. Can we overlook this? After hearing Lawrence's explanation, I felt a weight lifted off my shoulders. Well, if Lawrence is fine with it, then so am I. I was just taken aback by how different Emily looks now. It's not fair to judge someone solely based on appearances, and it's not my place to complain. My family seemed to agree with my sentiment. Later, we all had a good time drinking together until Emily caused a scene. She got extremely drunk and started hurling insults at everyone around her. "You dare to defy me?" I once took down 3 classmates at once back in middle school. It became evident that she had a tendency to become aggressive when intoxicated. She even directed hurtful words at me and David, yelling, "Stop clinging onto life needlessly, you old pests. Nobody is pleased that you're still alive." Her words cut deep. There's a limit to what's acceptable, even under the influence of alcohol. David looked furious, and Lawrence was visibly shocked. "Hey, even for a drunken conversation, you've crossed the line. Apologize." However, Emily didn't even listen to Lawrence. "You dump all the chores on me, then have the guts to lecture me, a weakling like you. I could take you down in a heartbeat." Emily kept on with her verbal assault, causing chaos and trouble for everyone around. Eventually, she passed out from the alcohol and the tension eased, but the mood remained sour. Everyone was furious with Emily. Then one of the relatives brought up Emily's earlier claim about defeating classmates. Was she a troublemaker in the past? They asked. No, Lawrence replied. Emily graduated from a public university. I always thought she was a serious person. But the relative remained doubtful. Do we have any proof she's been on the straight and narrow? Maybe we should dig into Emily's past to see what kind of person she really is. I agreed with the idea. It might be worth looking into, I said. Lawrence promised to investigate further. Since Emily had no living parents and few ties to her relatives, he decided to hire a private investigator. The investigation uncovered that Emily had been quite rebellious during her middle school years and even led a group of troublemakers. She was so infamous that even the local troublemakers followed her lead since she was in 9th grade. Concerned about her future, Emily started to put on a more serious facade. Despite graduating from a public university, she remained connected with her rowdy group of friends. Even now, when Lawrence was at work, Emily would invite these troublesome friends over, causing disturbances that annoyed the neighbors. It became clear that Emily was hiding her true nature. She was indeed a troublemaker. Frustrated by this behavior, Lawrence brought up the idea of divorce. However, Emily reacted with tears and pleading. I'm sorry. I'll change and be more serious. Please forgive me. I need you, Lawrence. Please don't leave me. She even reverted to her old appearance and deleted her friends' contacts from her phone right in front of Lawrence. She apologized to the relatives she had upset during the New Year's gathering and repeatedly called me to apologize. Seeing her efforts, Lawrence began to reconsider his decision. As a result, Lawrence and Emily decided not to divorce and opted to continue their married life. Since Lawrence was the one married to Emily, my husband, and I felt it wasn't our place to interfere too much. So we respected Lawrence's decision. When I saw Emily again at the family summer gathering, she seemed to have become a more serious person, and I hoped things would be fine from then on. However, one day while I was at my part-time job, I strained my back while lifting a heavy object. The pain was so severe that I couldn't move. My colleagues rushed me to the hospital, where I was diagnosed with a significant back strain and advised to rest. When I called Lawrence to tell him about it, he suggested something unexpected. Why don't you come and live with us? Both Emily and I, along with Dad, could take care of you. At your age, incidents like these might happen more often, and it would be better if we were there to help. As I pondered the idea, it seemed like a sensible solution. Once my back pain had subsided, my husband, Lawrence, Emily, and I sat down and discussed the idea of living together. We all agreed it made sense, especially considering our spacious single-family home. With no space issues, Lawrence and Emily moved in with us, and we began our shared living arrangement. Initially, everything went smoothly. Emily took on half of the household chores, which lightened my load significantly. My husband and I contributed financially, providing around $3,000 each month to cover expenses. Although my part-time job limited my financial contribution, I wanted to ease the financial strain on Lawrence and Emily as much as possible. However, Emily's behavior started to change gradually. She began claiming she wasn't feeling well and started pushing more of the household responsibilities onto me. Initially, I believed her and took on the extra chores, but I soon noticed inconsistencies. She appeared perfectly healthy, eating hearty meals and even going out for leisure activities all day. Feeling perplexed, I confronted Emily gently, expressing my concerns. "I hate to question this, but are you truly unwell? You seem energetic and spend a lot of time outside." Emily's response was a fierce glare. "Why are you doubting me?" she snapped. "If you keep this up, I'll give you a piece of my mind." I was taken aback by her coarse language. It was evident she felt no remorse. She was likely only pretending to change to avoid losing Lawrence. Emily, sensing my shock, scoffed, "Are you scared, Aria?" "Well, get used to it. I've played the quiet girl for too long. It's time for me to be myself." "You're aware of the consequences if you continue, right, Emily?" It seemed Emily had used intimidation tactics before, perhaps during her school days. This behavior had carried over into adulthood, where she could manipulate others to get her way. While I couldn't deny feeling afraid of Emily, I hadn't lived 62 years to be pushed around. Holding my ground, I warned her sternly, "If your behavior crosses the line, it could be considered a crime, you know? I'm not here to obey your orders like a robot. If you push too far, I won't hesitate to involve the authorities." Emily appeared surprised by my unexpected response, but she quickly fired back, "Shut up, old woman. I'll never forgive you." Her outburst startled David and Lawrence, who rushed to see what was happening. They were both home since it was their day off. After briefly explaining the situation, David and Lawrence frowned. It was decided that the four of us would discuss the matter. "Diva." David addressed Emily firmly. "Firstly, apologize to Susie." However, Emily refused to apologize. Instead, she crossed her arms defiantly. "Why should I apologize to an old woman? I thought Susie would handle the household chores, so I agreed to live together. But my workload hasn't decreased as I expected. It's only gotten worse." Emily's next words were even more shocking. "No matter what anyone says, I won't change. From now on, you'll all do as I say. Oh, but Susie and David are useless. You two old hags can leave since you don't even contribute to the household chores." Her words ignited a fire within me. I've had it with this woman. I resolved firmly to seek revenge. My usually calm husband seemed equally furious, his face flushed with anger. "Should we leave now feeling the same?" he asked. "Or should I distance myself from Emily immediately?" I nodded in agreement, saying, "Yes, let's go." My husband and I swiftly packed our belongings and left without delay. Although we said we were moving out, we couldn't take large items like dressers, so we planned to return for them later. Lawrence mentioned he still needed to talk to Emily, so he chose to stay behind. My husband and I headed to a budget hotel for the time being. We didn't own another house, and we didn't want to burden our friends, so we opted to stay there until we found a new place. The next morning, Emily began bombarding my cell phone with calls starting at 8 a.m. Initially, I considered ignoring them, but her persistence was relentless, with 20 calls in just 1 hour. Though I regretted not blocking her number sooner, I felt a twinge of curiosity about her intentions, prompting me to answer once. "Hello, is this Susie?" Emily's voice sounded unnaturally sweet on the other end. Instantly, I sensed mischief brewing, and frankly, it gave me the creeps. From her serious demeanor to her sudden shift to a cutesy persona, I couldn't help but wonder how many faces Emily could wear. Regardless, one thing was clear. I couldn't trust her, no matter which version showed up. Realizing the futility of continuing the conversation, I simply replied, "No, thank you," and promptly ended the call. I blocked her number and barred her from all messaging apps to prevent further contact. My husband, observing my actions, followed suit. As a united front, we decided to cut off all communication from Emily indefinitely. Later in the afternoon, Lawrence called me. "Mom, I've divorced Emily. I left the house early this morning and just submitted the divorce papers." He explained that when he had informed Emily of his decision the previous night, her response had been dismissive. "Try if you can." With no hesitation, Lawrence proceeded with the divorce. Upon hearing this news, I couldn't help but feel relieved. Staying with someone like Emily would never lead to happiness. I shared with Lawrence that Emily had called earlier, acting strangely cutesy. Lawrence's expression soured at the mention of Emily's behavior. You know, back when Emily was rebellious, she would resort to acting cute to smooth things over with her boyfriend whenever things got awkward. She's incredibly naive if she thinks that tactic will work now that we're all adults. His sentiment resonated with me completely. Emily's been cheating too. What, really? I was genuinely taken aback. The thought that she would add infidelity to her already despicable behavior was beyond belief. Her claims of illness seemed increasingly dubious to me. She appeared perfectly healthy and went out far too often. Suspecting there was more to her story, I decided to hire a private investigator. The results were shocking. Emily had been cheating with an unknown man. Lawrence even provided photographic evidence showing Emily kissing a young man in public, his green hair making him stand out. I warned Emily that I pursue legal action against her, and I fully intend to. I'll also seek damages from her affair partner, Lawrence informed me. As I examined the photos he sent to my phone, Emily's nonchalant attitude in response to the accusations puzzled me. Then why did she call me? I pondered aloud. Who knows? Maybe she wanted to know where I was after I moved out. Emily never expected me to leave. She thought if she acted tough and intimidating, I'd stay, Lawrence surmised. But now that I'm gone for real, I think she panicked and tried to win me back. I sighed deeply. Regardless of her motives, I had no desire to aid someone like her. I hoped she would experience the full weight of loneliness on her own. After some time, my husband, Lawrence, and I managed to secure a new apartment where we could all live together. Initially, we contemplated evicting Emily from our old house and returning there. But considering its size and potential vacancy in the future, we deemed it more practical to sell it off. Lawrence agreed, expressing his willingness to part with the property. Living there isn't a necessity for me. Selling it sounds like the best option, he remarked. As for Emily losing her place, it was of little concern to us. With the help of relatives, we returned to the old house to retrieve our belongings. To our dismay, Emily greeted us with a smug grin, suggesting that we resume living together. I realized I can't bear loneliness. Wouldn't it be better for us all to live together again? Plus, I want to save money and avoid paying Lawrence any alimony, she proposed audaciously. Her bold request ignited my simmering anger. If you're going to make a request, at least do so humbly. This isn't a matter for jest. No matter how you plead, I won't entertain it, I snapped. David, my husband, interjected with a cold tone. We're selling this house, so leave promptly and fulfill your obligations to Lawrence. I could never forgive you. Stop attempting to reignite our relationship. Lawrence echoed his sentiments firmly. Emily's flirtatious facade crumbled at his words. Lawrence has a stable income, so I initially thought marrying him would allow me to relax and become a housewife. But now, there's no ulterior motive. I truly love Lawrence. And of course, I need both of you, Susie and David, Emily insisted. However, her words did little to quell the seeking anger within us. Mine, David's, and Lawrence's, only serving to stoke the flames further. In that tense moment, a previously silent relative, who had been observing the situation, couldn't remain silent any longer. They interrupted Emily with a firm voice. Emily, you are a despicable woman. If you have so much to say, why don't we settle this with a fair fight? You seem confident about your strength. With a hint of intimidation, the relative revealed their physical prowess, reminding Emily that they had competed in a national karate competition. This relative in their 30s was well known for their strength, and we had called them in case Emily decided to cause trouble. Sensing the imminent threat, Emily recoiled. No, I don't want to fight. Once you leave, don't ever bother Susie and the rest again. Leave quickly, but before you do, offer a proper apology, the relative warned in a low voice, exuding an intimidating presence. Emily, subdued by the imposing atmosphere, acquiesced with a whimper. Emily's sudden change in demeanor caught us off guard as she swiftly replied, Yes, I understand. I'll leave immediately. I'll leave all my large belongings here. I'm truly sorry, she groveled. Good riddance. Packing her belongings and departing, the relative smirked. It was evident that Emily's tough facade crumbled in the face of those she perceived as stronger. As David, Lawrence, and I watched her retreat, we couldn't help but burst into laughter. With the nuisance finally gone, our moving preparations proceeded seamlessly, and we successfully relocated to our new home without any trouble. Following her departure, Emily rented an apartment and began living alone. True to Lawrence's warning, he filed for alimony, which Emily and her lover promptly paid, likely due to the involvement of a lawyer. It appeared that Emily couldn't stand up to someone with greater power, as my relative had predicted. Since then, I've kept my distance from Emily, but I've heard about her activities through various sources. News reports and conversations with acquaintances have painted a picture of Emily's life following her departure. Initially, Emily depleted most of her savings to fulfill her alimony obligations. With plans to marry her former affair partner and rely on his income, she was left in the lurch when he severed all ties. Desperate for stability, she attempted a job at a private company only to quit abruptly after clashing with her boss. In a shameless bid for financial support, she approached me, my husband, and Lawrence at our workplaces, but we steadfastly ignored her pleas, causing her to eventually give up. Facing mounting debt and rejection from her former associates, Emily's desperation led her to assault one of her gang members in a fit of rage, resulting in her arrest and subsequent imprisonment. My husband, Lawrence, and I couldn't help but feel that she had reaped what she sowed. Emily had a history of troublemaking, never showing any remorse for her actions. It seemed only fitting that she face the consequences of her behavior behind bars, where she could hopefully reflect on her choices. In stark contrast, my husband, Lawrence, and I were enjoying peaceful, contented lives. The three of us lived harmoniously together, and we even had plans for a trip on our next extended weekend. Our apartment offered the convenience of easy cleaning and proximity to the station, making it a wise choice for our new home. We were determined to continue cherishing our tranquil existence as a family of three.